What's going on YouTube? My name is Zach with Android Digest, and today we are going to be reviewing this phone right here, which is the Motorola Edge. Now, Motorola, they have been making a lot of mid-range smartphones lately. Well, they don't just want to make $300 phones anymore. They actually want to get into that flagship killer category right between $500 and $700 because smartphones are getting crazily expensive, and that's where this Motorola Edge really comes in. So, is this Motorola Edge worth buying? It's $699, and that's what it released at. Is it worth buying for that? Is it worth buying when it goes on sale? It did go on a pre-order sale to $499 and went back up right after that. So what is it worth buying at? Is it worth buying? Is this the flagship killer we've all been waiting for? Let's find out right now. Let's get into it. All right. So the Motorola Edge is here, and the specs, I just want to go through them right away because they are pretty good. You've got a Snapdragon 765G, a 90 Hz screen. This phone is 5G compatible. Now that is dependent on your carrier. I know it will work with the T-Mobile 5G network, but it does vary with different carriers. But this phone is compatible with Verizon. It's compatible with all carriers in the US. This phone has 6 GB of RAM and 256 GB of storage. This phone also has a triple camera setup, and there's one thing that could be a little divisive, and that is, in the name, it is the Edge. When we look at the design of the phone, you're going to see a lot of things that people like. You're going to see a headphone jack on the bottom, of course USB-C and a speaker. You know, you're going to see good things like that. Your power button and your up and down of the volume on the side. An SD card slot on the top. Those are great things. And when you look at the screen, you're going to see great things. An in-screen fingerprint reader. You're going to see small bezels. That's great. But one of the most divisive parts of this phone is the Edge. So, spoiler alert, this phone is fantastic. It is great in oh so many ways, and I'm going to talk about that all through the review. But one of the big divisive points that is really going to divide people on this phone is, do you like this Edge? Do you like the edges of this phone? Because if I put this case on, you'll notice the screen is lifted above the case on the sides. Cases are going to be less protective. You could get a monstrous OtterBox and it's still going to be harder to protect this phone with this Edge. It's going to be harder to put screen protectors on a phone with an Edge. I was looking through Facebook, and when I originally looked at Facebook, there were certain people's posts that started off on the Edge, and it's a little harder to read on that Edge. Some people are going to think back to the Galaxy S7 and say, boy, I love those edges on this phone, and well, other people are just going to hate it. Now this phone is really easy to hold, and that is because of, you guessed it, the Edge. Everyone's going to feel very differently about it, but I've got to say it's a very premium design. When I look at the back of the phone, it looks great. It looks really, really good. It looks classy. The color's really nice. The front looks about as good as you could get, about as modern as you could get, with just a small hole punch and super small bezels. So the design is great, but you might not like how the screen curves. But if you can get past that, you're going to see a whole bunch of stuff that you're absolutely going to love about this phone. I mean, the screen, for one, is just absolutely phenomenal. When we look at the specs on the display, it has a 6.7-inch screen. It's very, very large, but you wouldn't really know it because this phone is pretty easy to hold and feels great in the hand. It's got a 2340 by 1080 resolution. This is an AMOLED screen. Very, very good, very vibrant, looks phenomenal. So this phone, in my opinion, has a better screen than, yes, the Google Pixel 4 or the Google Pixel 4 XL. It has a Samsung-like screen. It reminds me of the screen that was on the Galaxy S10 Lite. It is a very premium screen. It's not quite 4K, but I don't want a 4K screen in a phone because that'll drain the battery a little more. So I think they really hit the perfect spot with this screen. It's plenty bright and it looks so good. I should also mention that this screen is a 90 Hertz screen. If you don't know a lot about 90 Hertz, once you go to 90 Hertz, you will never go back, or you probably won't want to. Because this phone, it just feels smooth. When you think of a refresh rate, it just means the screen refreshes a little faster. So when you're scrolling and you have a good refresh rate, it just looks smoother. And when you do notice and you use a phone with a good refresh rate like this, you're not gonna wanna go back to a phone with a 60 Hertz refresh rate. So the display, it gets a great rating from me. Absolutely love it. What about performance? This phone does have the Snapdragon 765G and 6 gigabytes of RAM. Now some people are gonna say, that is just not good. That's a mid-range chip. That's the terminology that's used out there. Well, the Snapdragon 765G is very underrated. You might not care. You might say, oh, Snapdragon 765G, who cares? Tell me how fast it is. Okay, it's very fast. It's very good. I have not noticed a lot of lag. As I scroll through everything, things seem smooth. When I open up apps, things are smooth. I don't have hiccups. I don't have closeouts. My apps aren't closing out on their own or anything like that. Things were just very smooth from start to finish. I came from a Pixel 4 XL. That's been my daily driver. Came to this, and this felt a little bit faster, if I'm honest. So people keep claiming it's not a flagship processor. Well, if you compare this to a flagship processor in the Google Pixel 4, this phone has, I would argue, a better processor. And yes, you could look at benchmarks and these two processors are pretty darn close. But this phone just felt smooth from start to finish. I didn't have any hiccups with it. Things were very, very quick. And if you're a normal human being that is not a benchmark machine, you're going to love this phone and it's going to be very, very smooth for you. You're going to enjoy the performance for sure. All right, so what about the camera? How is it? I would say this camera is very good. If I'm going to summarize quickly, it is a step below flagship level, and that's not a knock. I would say this camera, when you think of cameras like LG phones or you think of OnePlus, I'd say this is a notch even above some of those, at least in my opinion. So you could see for yourself here, this does have a triple camera setup, and I'm going to show some sample shots that I took of my daughter in various conditions and also myself. You could see the camera is very, very good. With a 64 megapixel regular sensor, well, you also have an ultra wide and a telephoto lens. And when you look at those two cameras, I didn't really get great results from them, if I'm honest. They didn't really look that great. I found myself just staying in the regular camera mode. And when I did, I was not disappointed. Things looked great and pictures looked really good. And even though it wasn't quite, again, up to Pixel 4 level or up to the best iPhone out there, it is pretty darn close, and I was actually very surprised. And even video looked pretty good. This does record 4K as well. It does record 1080p video, of course, and when I recorded video, it looked really good. It looked really great, and I did not have any complaints. Now, as far as the battery, this phone has a 4,500 milliamp battery. In short, I think it'll get your heavy users through the day. I think it'll get your moderate users even more so through the day. This phone has lasted me very long. It could be even between 6 and 8 hours of screen time, just depending on the day and what I'm doing and things like that. And that's with a 90 Hertz refresh rate in. If you're new to that, you just need to know it does use more battery, so it's a bonus when you can get through the day like this. So really great battery. I think most people are going to be very happy about that. Now, what about the other features of this phone? Well, this does have an in-screen fingerprint reader. So this phone will unlock a little bit slower than phones like OnePlus or maybe the Galaxy S20. the fingerprint sensor is a little bit slower in this phone. But I added 2 fingerprints and I haven't really had it reject really at all. I've had nearly 100% success rate. So I'm not as annoyed with it as I thought I would be. I thought the technology would not be good. Even though it's a little bit slower, still does the job, still works great. As far as speakers, I've got to say, the sound is really loud. I enjoy it, and you may feel the vibration a little bit through the phone if you're holding it, if you have it at max volume, but the sound is very, very good. So what features did Motorola skimp out on? Because when we're talking about this phone, we have to realize that they are trying to kill the flagships, so they had to skimp out on a few things. Now you need to know they did compromise on water resistance. So if water resistance is a big deal to you, they have a water repellent design, but I don't see any certifications out there for it, so that is a little bit of a bummer. As far as other compromises, this phone doesn't fast charge quite as fast as some of the latest flagships. It has 17 watt fast charging, and a lot of the newer flagships have 30 watt fast charging, so your newer phones might be able to charge a little bit faster than this phone. And this phone does not wirelessly charge. So those are the compromises, at least with this regular model. The Plus model may have some of those features, which is pretty cool, but this phone isn't trying to have all the features. It's trying to have just enough features to justify the price. Does this phone do it? Is this phone worth buying? Well, as always, I always say, it depends. At $700, I think this phone is slightly overpriced. This phone did go on sale. The pre-order price was actually $499, and I expect it to go on sale more. So if you see this phone for $599, you see this phone for $499, is it a phone worth buying? I'd say, generally, yes. I would recommend this phone to a ton of people. But the 2 compromises that I think will affect the most people is the Edge. Do you like this Edge? That's the big question. That might be why you're watching this review in the first place, because you're in love with the Edge. You miss your Galaxy S7 Edge. Well, if you love the Edge, really important to you, then you're probably gonna like this phone. In fact, this will probably be one of your favorite phones of 2020. It's got a great refresh rate, a great processor, great performance. It's got 5G. You're really future-proofed with this phone in a lot of ways. It just doesn't wirelessly charge and doesn't have water resistance. So if you could live with the compromises that I mentioned, so if you could live with no wireless charging, if you can live with slower fast charging, if you can live with, well, having this Edge here, I think this phone is definitely worth buying. And especially if you get it for $599 or $499. I think this phone fits in phenomenally at those prices. The design, it's not my favorite. I could find a phone with similar specs with the design I like a little more. But if you do love the Edge, again, it's got all these great specs, and I know you could find it for a great price over time. Absolutely. This phone will definitely be worth buying. Thank you so much for continuing to be here to support my channel. I really appreciate it. You know, I am just a normal guy who loves tech, and I'm trying to pursue something I'm really passionate about. So thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Feel free to also follow us on Twitter. We have a Twitter account. It's a little bit late to the game, and you could follow us at Digest Android, because we give you Android to digest and you digest Android. So follow us there, and also follow us on Facebook at The Android Digest. Give us a like there. So thank you so much for watching. We hope you have a great day, and we will see you soon. Stay safe.